Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Roundup. I am your host, David Fox. With me, as usual, is the wonderful and lovely UberHansen. Folks, I am glad to be able to do this. First of all, it's been a long time since we've been on. We were not on last week for the Monday show. Both Uber and I had prior engagements to take care of. And in all honesty, it was probably okay that we didn't do that because I was not ready to do another round of Ken Dorsey discourse. The rest of the Cover One crew handled that very well. And now we're on to the Jets and soon to be the Eagles. And it's a lot easier to do this show after a game like that. I'm just going to throw that out there. It's a lot more fun. It's a lot less annoying, to say the least. So I am very glad to be able to deliver this show after a great win like that against a team that I just despise at this point, like the New York Jets. So before we have a great show ahead of us, gotta talk about this Jets game, gotta talk about Joe Brady, gotta talk about defense, all that wonderful fun stuff. We'll do an Eagles preview at the end. Before we get to any of that, Uber, how are you doing?
Yeah, good. Like you said, it's much easier to do this show after a win like that against a team like that. So yeah, I'm ready to talk about it and ready to kind of hopefully watch this team go on a run.
Hey, from your lips to God's ears. Seriously, it's this is the thing about being able to get a win when you're still in the hunt and you're that with it being so muddy in the AFC that it's possible as long as you just get that win and then you get that win and you get that hope, and the hope's always what kills you. But man, you feel it though. You feel it a little bit. All right, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Before we get too much further into this, we're going to take care of a little business, and we're going to start with our lovely friends over at the Cover One flagship show, Greg and Aaron.
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
Thank you, Greg and Aaron. Always immaculate on that read. It's the exact same thing every time. I don't know how they do it. Speaking of immaculate, Tim A is absolutely right. The vibes are immaculate. Could not be more immaculate after that win. You know what else is immaculate? Underdog Fantasy, our other sponsor of this show. Folks, if you're at a point in your fantasy football season where things just aren't going your way, you didn't get Josh Allen, you didn't get Diggs, you didn't get any of the players you wanted in your draft, and now you're paying the price for that. The season's over, it's done, except it's not over. It's not done. You can use Underdog Fantasy's Pick'em contest. You can win money predicting if Josh Allen will go over his yard totals, his touchdowns, completions, and more. If you think Allen to Diggs or Allen to Kincaid, hey, maybe even Allen to Shakir will go crazy this week. You can put them both in your Pick'em, predict up to 5 different over-unders correctly, win 20 times your original money. If you use the promo code COVER1, that's the number 1 when signing up to make your first deposit, Underdog will match that deposit up to $100. That is a free $100 in free play. If you use promo code COVER1, sign up today and start winning today. All right. That's all out of the way now. I am excited to jump into this. We're going to just go right into the thing that will be the topic of conversation this week, and is already the topic of conversation. Eric already did a video today, as RJ referenced right here. So I got a lot of hate for my disdain for Dorsey. A good deal of it was tongue-in-cheek humor, but I was also kind of correct. Everyone should go watch Eric's video after the show. They should watch it. They should, because I watched it, before I came on, and it was spot on. It was really exciting to see what Joe Brady did with Ken Dorsey's playbook, right? Because that's the other thing, right? Like this is sort of what we said going into this game was that you're not going to get a huge schematic difference, right? Like you can't do that in the middle of the season. It's not possible to overhaul the entire offense in the middle of the season. But there are things that you can do to help your offense, either from a sequencing standpoint or by adding motion or just sort of taking a couple of concepts and putting them together. And Brady did all those things. And he did them well, and it showed on the field. I mean, passes over the middle, throwing to the running backs against the Jets linebackers, who, if there was a weakness on this team, it would be that. It was just really, really good. It felt like there was cohesion. It felt like there was rhythm. It felt like they were in sync. It felt like, okay, this is what this offense should look like. And again, this is a very tough Jets defense. Obviously, they were thrown up against the wall by this Jets offense, and even from the start on that kickoff by having them fumble the ball and giving them the ball right in front of the red zone, and they still managed to stand up there. I mean, they held them to the 3 field goals to start the game. They're a tough defense, but over the course of the game, when your offense just can't do anything, can't pick up first downs, can't find a way to the end zone to save their life outside of a fake punt and a bad penalty, not like a bad penalty. It was the right call, but it was just gifting them yards. If that was the only way they were going to score, then that makes sense why your defense eventually just breaks at a certain point. You go ahead. I've already talked.
I mean, we're talking about Joe Brady in particular. Like, you saw a lot of the same plays being run in this game, and one thing people weren't complaining about much after this game is they were running out of shotgun a good amount. They had that weird little sprint draw to James Cook on a handful of occasions, but at the same time, you also saw some wrinkles, some changes, and one of the biggest things was obviously motion pre-snap, and it was fully encapsulated in that touchdown pass to James Cook. You motion James Cook closer to the line. You see that it's in man. You know that you have that man beat already when James Cook's going to run across the line. He does that. He's wide open because there's no way that defender can keep up with him. So that motion is something the fan base was constantly clamoring for, was completely right about, that it gives Josh more ability to understand the defense he's going up against prior to snapping the football. It was in full effect against a Jets defense that is elite. They're one of the best defenses in the entire NFL, and the Bills made them look not so great. And I just think it was time for a change with the Ken Dorsey thing. Somebody needed to fall on a sword at some point in time, and now Joe Brady, we didn't know what we were going to see, and at least the returns from the first game. It's one game. It's just a single game. I keep trying to remind myself of that. But from this one game, you see so much, and whether it be the tangible results on the field or the intangible, people have kind of been harping on this since the game yesterday. It looks like Josh Allen had fun. It just looked like we kind of saw that animal come back. And now there's a clip coming out from NFL, I don't know, one of the NFL, sources or something. And it's Josh saying, "I think I'm fucking back." And it's like, oh my God, wait a minute. We might have something here. And if Josh Allen is quote unquote back, I mean, sky's the limit for this team.
Yeah, I think that there was just a clear shift in energy in how they played just throughout the whole game, right? It wasn't just getting a couple of really good plays or going on a solid drive and then, stalling out completely or turning the ball over, right? So like we said, the last month and a half when the offense was struggling, it's not all Ken Dorsey, right? He had some weird luck on turnovers. They, didn't execute. They had some drops. They, you had Allen missing reads, et cetera, but, and I think it's fair to say, when you look at a lot of the, national guys or some of these guys from, these places that go and talk about all these different teams week to week, I think they're fair to bring up things like EPA and total points and things like that show that the offense was doing well, but that ultimately when you watch this team, when you watch the offense during that stretch, there was something off. And when you turn on the film, like people here at Cover One often do, you see where the problems are, and you see like where Dorsey is winning, and you see where he's failing. And you saw a shift in that with Brady, where he wasn't just overly committed to the same ideas and same concepts. He was doing a couple little tweaks here and there, and that's fine. That's all you really need to do. You don't need to have the exact right coverage beater every single time. What you need is just to present the right options and to have those different concepts come together. And again, this is all, if you haven't watched Eric's video from earlier today, go watch it. It kind of just breaks everything down in a much better way than I ever will. But ultimately, like, there were things that Brady did specifically that Ken Dorsey just wasn't doing. And I was listening to a podcast earlier today at work where the implication was that this was the exact same Bills offense. They were just executing and doing things better. To an extent, that's true. They did execute better. They caught the ball. Really, the only one that was disappointing was Diggs, right? Where he got a couple of drops and a fumble that thankfully did not turn into a turnover. Again, turnover luck going your way instead of against you. And that all is true, and that's all very fair to bring up. But I think it's also fair to say that if you watched that game and your conclusion was, oh, this is just the same offense, they're just doing things better. Gotta tell you, I'm going to say this with my whole chest. I don't think you're actually watching the tape, bro. Yeah. Like, it's just, there's very specific things that were going on in that Jets game that Brady was doing that Ken Dorsey was not doing, that needed to be done. And again, Eric brought this all up in his video earlier today. This is the sort of stuff that needed to be done, and it just wasn't happening. So to sit here and say, well, it's the same thing. They just, this is inevitable. We all said this is going to happen. Sure, go sit on your high horse on top Mount Pius and talk about how you just knew this was going to happen after 6 weeks of it not happening. Like, I was fine with it. I mean, relatively speaking, of course. I was fine with it when it was 1 week, 2 weeks, even 3 weeks. Then that turned into 6. That's no longer just oh, everything will be fine. That's a problem, and there needs to be a fix. And again, firing Dorsey is not the only thing that fixed this. The players played better. They needed to play better in order to be a better offense. It's not all Ken Dorsey. Josh Allen was missing reads. Players were dropping balls. That's all part of it. But there is a clear shift now. And if Josh Allen is out there saying, I think I'm back, that kind of also implies that there was something wrong, and he felt that there was something wrong.
Yeah, it makes me, that was, after watching the game, just going by feelings and vibes alone, something felt better in the game. Just specifically saying that, it felt easier. And it doesn't make sense that it felt easier because the Jets' defense is really good. But lo and behold, it did feel easier. But then when I hear today Josh saying, I feel like I'm back, that sentence, just that single sentence to me, just implies that there was something seriously wrong. Not just wrong. He felt so much like he was a shell of himself that now he's saying, I feel like I'm back. And I don't think that is necessarily a dig directly at Ken Dorsey. In watching the interviews that Josh has had this past week, and even after this game, I think he legitimately feels bad that Ken Dorsey got fired because he's putting so much of it on himself, which honestly, some of it should be put on Allen for his poor play at times. But for him to say, I'm back, it just sends a message to me, sends a message to the fans, and seemingly sends a message to the team that, look, we got through that dark shit, and now we have now I'm feeling like I'm ready to go out and go on a run, and he's going to have to go on a run because they have a gauntlet they have to run through if they're going to even make the playoffs. And I just think beating the Jets in this manner, the Jets are not a good overall football team. They are a very good defensive team. And for Josh to do what he did yesterday to them, the one single blemish on his entire game was an interception on a Hail Mary that I don't give a damn about. And I don't think Josh Allen gives a damn about. The only people that do are box score washers that are going to use that and kind of expose themselves and be like, well, Josh threw an interception against the Jets. Did you watch the interception? I mean, it was a 50-50 ball that was thrown on purpose. Like, we knew it could have gotten picked, and it doesn't matter. So, yeah, something literally felt different yesterday, and I think that that's something to be excited about for not only Josh Allen, not only the Bills offense, but the team as a whole seemed to vibe on every level yesterday.
Yeah, 100%. And with the offense, I mean, it was a very it was an interesting split with the running backs, right? With James Cook obviously getting the bulk of the carries. We also saw a lot more of Ty Johnson than I ever expected to see. And I mean, clearly we should have anticipated the Ty Johnson revenge game, right? Like that. Of course. The fact that we didn't bring it up is kind of a mistake on our part, obviously. But it was a very interesting split. Obviously, Cook was the lead guy. Ty Johnson got a couple of touches, including a very, very nice touchdown catch and run on a fourth down, right? Like that was that was the right decision at that point, right? You're already up 9. You're near that position where it's a long field goal. Going up by 12 isn't really going to change much. In terms of how the Jets are going to play offense, it's not really going to change how you're going to play things. Like going for it there, and if you don't get it, at that point you probably feel pretty confident in your defense to hold the Jets to whatever will happen, right? So they go for it, and not only is it just wide open and well schemed that way by Brady, but also like just a good catch and run. He saw it, he got it right down the sideline, touchdown. Like. That was great. And I mean, let's just yards after the catch yesterday, right? Between Ty Johnson, Dalton Kincaid, I feel like is almost always good for a couple of plays where he gets another 5 or 10 yards or whatever after the catch. And obviously the big 81-yarder to Khalil Shakir. I mean, actually both of Shakir's catches, or not both, he had 3 catches, but 2 of them were big yards after the catch plays. And that was like, yeah, that's what that's something that has always sort of been missing from a Josh Allen offense. And part of that is sort of just because of the way Josh Allen plays and he doesn't always necessarily lead receivers well. He doesn't always, put the ball exactly where it needs to be, timing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Still though, guys like Kincaid, that's an encouraging sign to see from them to be able to do that, because it means fewer times that Josh Allen has to be doing something. Right. Every one of those 5-10 yards that you're getting is great. It really helps move this from just like a possession type of offense to an offense that can just make big plays and do something without it always having to come back to Allen to make all of the yards himself. So I was very excited by that in particular.
Yeah, I mean, leading up to the game, like watching the 1:00 window, I was flipping back and forth between a couple games, and the one thing I kept seeing and like in my head was kind of going over and over again is I was seeing wide open players at times, and then I was seeing players make plays with the ball after the catch, and I found myself thinking going into the Bills game, I'm like, why do we so rarely see that with this team? And like the frustration kind of growing in me before this game even started, and then when Ty Johnson scored that touchdown, I'm like, I don't know the last time like I've seen something like that where like he just put on the Jets and was like, all right, bye. I'll get most of the yards. I'll get 100% of the yards essentially on this pass. Usually it's Josh slings the ball 50 yards and we get 52 yards. Ooh, yay, 2 yak yards. Like Josh is consistently at the bottom of the yak totals year after year, which is a Josh Allen problem, by the way. Like it's because of the way he plays. But to see the Bills be able to kind of diversify their offense and create this yak with players like Ty Johnson and Khalil Shakir, it's a good thing for the future too, because now when the Bills play the Eagles next week, the Eagles have to look and say like, all right, well, we have to know where Khalil Shakir is, because if he gets the ball in the open field, maybe he takes one to the house. We need to know if Ty Johnson's on the field, he's not just going to be back there blocking. No, he could run out for a pass. He could run the ball. Like the Bills kind of set themselves up this game with the way that they played in a different way than they normally have to confuse opposing defenses moving forward. And it was another reason why, like, good vibes for this game. Like, Khalil Shakir, absolutely, like, cooking Sauce, even though Sauce wants to pretend like, you know, it had nothing to do with him. He could have made the play anyway. He decided not to, but, you know, it's on somebody else, you know.
That man got to his locker, grabbed his phone, and went to Twitter so fast to let everyone know that wasn't his fault.
I mean, let's be honest. Sauce did not have a good game. Like, he got the holding penalty on Diggs in the end zone for maybe the first time ever he's been called for holding. And then he legitimately, like, he was part of the issue on that Shakir touchdown, and Shakir ends up running down the field. Sauce could have still made the play down the field and decided essentially not to. Shakir goes 81 yards for a touchdown. It was just good vibes all around. And like, I don't know if you said this off the air or at the early, onset of the show. Like, I don't like the Jets. I
don't like the Jets. Screw the Jets. I mean, seriously, like, since we're talking about Sauce Gardner, he also threw down Stephon Diggs after, like, the very first play,
the suplex
from the second half, and it's just like, all right, settle down, dude. Like, if you want to go do wrestling, go join Gronk or whatever. I don't care. Like, what are you doing, man? And then, like, throughout the rest of the second half, obviously the Jets defense was getting frustrated. I can't blame them. I'd be pretty frustrated too, and it probably wouldn't have taken me until week 11 to get to that level of frustration, to be perfectly honest. But they're just getting so chippy. They're getting all nasty. And the Bills do it. The Bills played right into it, right? Like, Deion Dawkins slamming himself onto the dude. And jeez. God, I love Deion Dawkins. And then, of course, after the game, they're trying to start a fight in the tunnel. And it's great watching. It's just so great watching it from the angle from behind, right, where you see Zach Wilson off to the side talking to, I think, another Jets staffer or whatever, and he looks, he's like, oh, I'm not getting involved in that. And you see Robert Saleh just, like, walking away from it, like, yep, that's not my problem. I'm just the head coach. What do you want me to do there? Like, come on, man. And you know what?
I used to actually not like the Jets, but in years past, I've been like, I feel for Jets fans, and I feel for this team, and, like, it sucks where they're at. And then, like, Aaron Rodgers getting hurt week 1, I'm like, man, I really didn't like the Jets going into the season, but I got to feel for them when that happens. But then Saleh and the rest and even their fans start getting mouthier and mouthier. Saleh's talking about embarrassing people. It's just – that got me worked up. So going into this game, I did actually temper my expectations. I'm like, I don't know what we're going to see. If we see, the same old, awful Bills, whatever, I'll just deal with it. But then we start to see them like, oh, God, wait, they might blow this team out. And then as they're blowing them out, I just started, like, feeding on the tears of Jets fans and Robert Saleh realizing, like, oh, shoot, I put my entire career on the shoulders of Zach Wilson, and now I'm probably going to lose my freaking job. Oh, I loved it. Loved it.
I mean, this. You think he's gonna lose? You think he's gonna lose his job?
One of Saleh or Joe Douglas has to lose their job. You have to fire one of them. So pick which one. And I'm saying one gets going.
I don't think either of them are getting fired at the end of the season.
Jeez.
And I'll tell you what,
disaster.
They're going to do the exact. They're going to present Johnson, whatever his name is, whoever the owner is. Yeah. Woody Johnson. That's why I couldn't remember. Stupid ass name. It's a cartoon character. You have a cartoon character as an owner. Great. Good job, guys. But they're going to go to Woody Johnson and basically say the same thing last year. Yeah. That they did last year. We're just a quarterback away. But hey, we've got the quarterback here. He's here. His name's Aaron Rodgers. He's here. But the problem is this. They did this last year. They knew they couldn't do this with Zach Wilson. Mm-hmm. They knew they couldn't do it with Zach Wilson. That's why they made Michael LaFleur. You want to talk about scapegoats? Michael LaFleur was made a scapegoat last year. They bring in Nate Hackett because he's Aaron Rodgers' buddy from Green Bay, even though everyone knows that Nate Hackett ain't that type of guy. Then you bring in Aaron Rodgers, and admittedly, for what I thought was going to happen in that trade, they didn't really give up a lot for him. And especially since he got injured in week 1, it means they only give a second round pick, I believe, to the Packers as opposed to a first. So, like, all things considered, not the worst thing from that angle, at least. But the other problem is he's 39 years old when you trade for him. He's 40 years old now. He's coming off of a torn Achilles. He wanted to retire before he went and did some new age meditation in a cave. And then suddenly he's back and wants to come back from an Achilles tear and is trying to he's straight up lying to people like, oh yeah, I could be ready to go by December. You tore your Achilles in September, my guy. What are you talking about, December? How much ayahuasca are you inhaling on a regular basis? What are you doing? What are you expecting to have happen here? And so all of that happens. They basically hand Rodgers the keys to this franchise because he's now essentially making decisions for them. Yeah, go sign Randall Cobb. Go sign Alan Lazard. Get these guys. This is what I want. This is who I want. Give me Nate Hackett. I love Nate Hackett. Great guy. All of it hinged on Aaron Rodgers, who again was 40 years old. There was no guarantee that this was going to work, that he was going to be healthy during this process. And your backup, your contingency plan to this was going back to the original problem.
Yeah. Yep.
That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense, except it's worse because Nate Hackett is so much worse than Matt LaFleur.
Yep.
I don't get it.
This is where my fireable fence comes on, and I will get back to the Bills in a second. But the second Aaron Rodgers goes down, the second he's hurt, one of Robert Saleh or Joe Douglas or both of them went to Woody Johnson and said, "No, we'll be fine. We'll be fine with Zach Wilson." If you went to the owner of a football team, any football team, and said you will be fine with Zach Wilson, your career's over. Fire you today. And that's why both of them should be fired. And you might be right. Neither might get fired. But if neither gets fired, to me, it's like, all right, good. Screw the Jets. Like, they have a talent evaluation issue. If they thought Zach Wilson was good at football, now they're starting Tim Boyle. Tim Boyle's their starter. He had one passing touchdown in college. One. And so, 16 interceptions or something at UConn? How is he in the NFL? I'm flabbergasted by this team. And for all the bad feelings I had for them, like supporting them when Aaron Rodgers got hurt, I feel the same exact opinions in the opposite way now. I'm like, screw this team. Their players are cocky little bitches, and the fans just were, they were freaking delusional all season. It feels good to know that the Jets are 4-6. They're probably going to finish third at best in the division. Hell, they might finish fourth still if the Patriots can get out of their own freaking way. This is good. It's good that the Bills beat this team and now their season's over. And Aaron Rodgers is going to pretend like he could come back from an Achilles injury, right. And he's going to say I'm healthy enough to play, and he's just going to be like, but there's no reason for me to come back. It's all BS though.
That's right.
Oh God.
Ridiculous. All right.
Sorry.
Just the typical news. Still one of my favorite usernames out there. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Separation is such an underrated trait. It's why Gabe Davis's targets differentiate week to week. When Shakir is open, he seems to really have space. This is actually a pretty good point. I'm not gonna lie. Gabe Davis has been used in different ways, and it's actually, I'm glad that Joe Brady brought up Gabe Davis today at his press conference. And really singled him out because, he was asked about, Gabe Davis had 0 targets, 0 catches. Do you feel good? And he basically said, this is why you have to watch the game. It's why you have to watch the film, because if you look at the stats, it doesn't look like he did anything. But I would have called him the MVP. That's Joe Brady saying that, and that's and this is what makes Gabe Davis valuable, right? Whether it's to the Bills or whoever he ends up going to in free agency, maybe the Bills don't bring him back. That's very up in the air right now. But he is able to do a lot of different things. He's a good possession receiver who can win in jump ball situations, but he also blocks really well. His size and his aggression as a blocker allows him to work closer to the line. And so if you need a change up there, if you need a crack block on a defensive end on an outside run or whatever, he's able to do that. He allows a lot of flexibility in your offense based on just that aspect alone. And the fact that he is fairly consistent as a receiver and not quite as, volatile as a catcher as some people might believe. It's a good point that he doesn't separate all that well. It's just not what he does. It's not his game. Mm-hmm. Whereas someone like Shakir is able to separate well. And now that he's in his second year and feels a bit more comfortable, you see him taking advantage of these opportunities. And the Bills like did a lot to the point, like to the wide receiver room, to the point where I was like, at some point in the offseason, I just sort of felt like, I don't know if Khalil Shakir is making this roster. And, Khalil Shakir stands were very upset at the idea that Khalil Shakir should not be like, a big part of this offense. And they were right. And I was wrong. The Khalil Shakir truthers were very right. And good for that. Because, I liked Khalil Shakir when he came out. I was shocked when he fell to the 5th round. I was so happy that the Bills took him. But after that first season, I was kind of like, there's a couple of plays here. But I don't necessarily feel like confident in him, like as a potential like wide receiver 3 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been good. He's been very good given his opportunity. So I'm very excited with that. Autumn says, "Why are we yelling? Because the Jets make us mad. That's all I can tell you." It's tough. Roy Collins says, "Gabe gone next year. Let him do all that stuff somewhere else." Look, I get it. I understand some people don't care about Gabe Davis. But I mean, let's be honest. If you put Gabe Davis on like the Bears right now, right? He makes that team a lot better. He makes that whole offense way better, and is kind of changes how they play entirely, to be perfectly honest. But he'll get paid, and he'll get a good role, I think, and he'll probably succeed because he's a good player. He's got great character. He's going to continue to work. I mean, he's a captain this year. Like this is somebody that the Bills are going to miss in some form or another if he decides to go somewhere else next year.
Yeah, I'll just like reiterate what you said about Khalil Shakir, because I had the same exact, take this offseason as you, and had the same exact reaction from the Shakir, whatever hive, whatever the hell they all called themselves. But yeah, I looked at Shakir and I'm like, he's a good depth receiver because he can do a lot of different things. He can play inside or outside. That's a great guy to have inactive every single week in case somebody gets hurt. I'd never thought he'd be what we've seen the past few weeks, and I'm happy that I was wrong about that. In fact, I was so wrong, or believe I'm so wrong, that at this point I kind of want to see more of him, and if that means taking snaps away from Gabe Davis, I'm okay with that. I'm actually really interested to see when or if Dawson Knox gets healthy again this year, where those snaps come from. I suspect they start coming from Davis. I think that right now they're using Davis in that blocking role that they were previously using Knox in. Granted, yesterday we saw a good amount of Quentin Morris kind of filling that role in that 12 personnel. But at the same time, like, I do look at Gabe Davis and I say, he is our wide receiver 2 right now, even though Shakir might be surpassing him slowly on that. But to have 2 catches in 3 games is just, that's an icky number. I know he does all these other things, and Joe Brady's right. Like, he's saying, like, yeah, I thought Gabe had a great game. He wasn't targeted once. He didn't catch one ball, but he did all these other things. But at the same time, 2 catches in 3 games for a guy with his snap share, with this quarterback in this offense, like, I need to literally see more than less than a catch a game. And I kind of feel for Gabe in that aspect, because this is a contract year. Like, this is going to kind of work against him in the offseason. But at the same time, like, I do think he's valuable to this team because of all those other reasons. It's just, I kind of wish we saw like him get hit on one bomb at some point in the coming weeks.
Yeah, 100%. Anything else you want to really talk about with the offense?
I do like the offensive line. I kind of just want to hop on that quick. Like, Spencer Brown got beat on one play pretty bad. I think he had a holding call on it. But other than that, Spencer Brown's been legitimately good. Not just average this year. He's been good. I think he's ranked in like the top 20 tackles in the league in pass and like his pass pro ratings and things along those lines. So Spencer Brown's been significantly better than I thought. And the offensive line as a whole, this has been the best play of an offensive line in front of Josh Allen we've seen in Josh Allen's career. Like, I don't think that should kind of get overshadowed. I think that this offensive line's playing really, really good football right now, and that's another reason to continue the good vibes.
Aaron Cromer, it's what he does. He's here to coach up offensive line and throw beach chairs at kids, and he's all out of beach chairs. The offensive line has really been good. And they've also been healthy, which has been really important, right? Like, you talk about like offense. It's hard to get like 5 legitimately decent offensive line starters in the NFL nowadays, much less keep them healthy. And they've been able to do that. It's been really, really good. In fact, it's so funny because we're going to talk about the defense and all the injuries that they've had on that side of the ball. Meanwhile, the Bills' offensive line, just stalwart, just been Iron Men, all of them. They've been doing really well. Osiris Torrance, especially as a rookie, he's just been really good. That's such a huge pickup to be able to solidify the interior with him, Morrison, McGovern. The book on him coming out of Dallas was that he was a good pass protector, like a really good pass protector, but not a good run blocker. That's essentially what he's been in Buffalo, and that's fine. That they paid him to basically be that, and that's what he's been. I have no problems with Connor McGovern right now. Deion Dawkins, though, he's taken another step, I think. He's always been sort of, in my mind, in that like low part of the top 10 left tackles, maybe even outside of it at times. Him and Aaron Kromer have gotten together, and they have taken his game to another level. He has been so good. It's really great to be able to see a player at this point of his career. I mean, he was a rookie in 2017 when McDermott had his first year here. And for him to now be in his, I can do math really quick. This is seventh year? Seventh year.
Seventh, yeah.
2017, 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 7 years. This is his 7th year in the NFL, and he's improving and making strides. And that's a really great thing. Like it's so great to be able to show just how important coaching is. Right, where like even somebody who's been in the league a while, who's had a couple of different offensive line coaches, can still be shown like, hey, this is where you can improve, and I'm going to show you how to do it. Right, like that's a really great thing. And Dalton Kincaid still doing really well. It's another week of a good Dalton Kincaid game, despite what some, well, not even some, one very specific fantasy football quote unquote expert will try to tell you on Twitter. Just look up Dalton Kincaid. I'm sure you'll find it on there. We're going to move on to the defense. Dear God, can we stop having injuries on defense? Oh, it's just gotten annoying at this point. Like,
I don't even know how it's like. I don't understand how it's even possible. Like it seems so impossible to me that so many key players. These aren't just run of the mill like rotational pieces. These are some of the Bills' best defenders getting hurt game after game after game. It feels like we can't go a single game without somebody being down and having to be carried off the field. And this week to have 3 defensive backs go down in one game, it doesn't make sense when we already are missing. Trey White, and we're already missing. Micah Hyde now has an injury too. So really, we had 4 defensive backs go down this game plus Trey White. Like it's rough. Like I don't. This is luck. There's no solution to this. It's just it's consistent with this team now for 2 years. Sorry, I'm yelling again.
No, that's fine. Dane Jackson going out is tough, but Rasul Douglas had his best game potentially of his career, and I get it. Zach Wilson, I understand we just went on a whole tirade about how bad Zach Wilson is, but also that's a great game to have no matter what. And he had a genuinely great game, and he's been great since he came over. I mean, he made that great play against the Bengals. He was good against the Broncos. Like he's been good. He's been good since he came over, and it looks like every week he's just been getting more comfortable with this defense. He looks like a great fit. That was a great trade by Bean at the deadline. And so him with Benford, I think, is really good because Benford is just really solid technique-wise, will be in position. He's not necessarily a playmaker, though. And Rasul Douglas is a playmaker at corner. He's able to come off his assignment and make a play on the ball. He's able to read what the offense is doing really, really well. And the longer he spends in this defense, I think the better he'll be. Taylor Rapp getting carted off or taken off in an ambulance rather was tough to see, but thankfully didn't actually end up going to the hospital. Everything came out negative. Sean McDermott even said he seems fine, could even play on Sunday, which is nice. The other part of my brain is I don't know if I want somebody who's taken off on an ambulance playing on a week later, but yeah, this is just sort of how it goes. Sometimes in the NFL, you take as many precautions as possible, and you hope for the best. And that seems to be the case with Taylor Rapp, so that's a good thing. The big injury really is to Taron Johnson, because this defense is not going to be the same if Taron Johnson is not out there. He is a genuine linchpin for this defense. With the way they play nickel so much, like, it's really hard to figure out how they would even play defense. I mean, much less against a team like the Eagles.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and yeah, for the Eagles, and we'll get to the Eagles, but like, the Eagles don't necessarily have like a huge presence in the slot necessarily. They are much more of a boundary team with guys like A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, or at least the outside receivers. Obviously, they'll come, over the middle at times, obviously. But, for the most part, this is you're worried about those two guys, not necessarily whoever's in the slot. But still, like, Taron Johnson brings more than just being a coverage guy. He is a leader. He brings a lot of energy. He brings a lot of physicality, especially in the run game. Like, he just allows them to do things on defense that they need to be able to do structurally. Like, it's going to be tough. And if he can't go, that's going to be a really, really big blow to this defense.
Yeah, and the weird thing was, like, this week I noticed this in the middle of the game. I saw Taron Johnson running back onto the field. This is obviously well before he got hurt, and I had realized that I was looking at three linebackers, three like legitimate linebackers, guys that are listed on the depth chart as linebackers. I was looking at three of them on the field at once, and I can't really remember the last time I saw that. And it was Tyrell Dodson, Terrell Bernard, and Dorian Williams. They literally took Taron Johnson off the field and they went base, which is so rare for this team because they so much didn't believe that Zach Wilson could beat them that they just bailed out and said, we're going to stop the run and Zach Wilson can try to beat us. We know he can't. And that worked for the Bills, but against a team like the Eagles, that's not going to work. Like, I don't think going base with those three linebackers is really going to beat a team like the Eagles. I would feel significantly more comfortable if we hear at some point this week, and I just don't know if we will, that Taron Johnson's out of concussion protocol. He makes this defense so much better, so much faster, and like allows them to do certain things in zone, allows him to do certain things in man, allows him to be run off the edges like a surprise blitzer, things along those lines. And losing Taron Johnson against a team that's led by Jalen Hurts is just a really, really bad recipe, and something the Bills are going to have to kind of figure out a way to live without this week and try to steal one in Philly.
Yeah, it's a tough matchup to not have one of your best players available. Yeah, it's going to be real tough for them. What about Ed Oliver? Let's talk about Ed Oliver. Because Ed Oliver is good, and he's been good. And I've said this ever since I started doing this podcast. That's one of the first things I did was write with my absolutely god-awful handwriting on a piece of paper in my apartment, Ed Oliver is good. And I threw it up on the camera for Kyle Salagi to read. And I was right, and I've remained right, and I will always be right about Ed Oliver because Ed Oliver is good. He has always been good. His doubters and haters were many, and they were all wrong.
You're 100% correct. And now that contract that Brandon Beane gave him looks like a steal. I'll tell you this. If you compare Ed Oliver's stats to Quinnen Williams this year, which one's having a better season? It's Ed Oliver. And Ed Oliver's not getting paid the money Quinnen Williams is getting paid. So right now, that Brandon Beane contract to Ed Oliver, that extension that a lot of fans kind of scoffed at, is looking like pretty much a steal here for the next few seasons.
Yeah. And, on the one hand, you have Ed Oliver, who's high-stepping on the sideline while Khalil Shakir makes a touchdown catch. And on the other sideline, you have Quinnen Williams screaming at Sauce Gardner to get his shit together. So, it's a nice contrast to see in the middle of the game.
Sure.
Yeah, Ed Oliver's just been great. And I think, going into this past offseason, right, with Tremaine Edmonds being the biggest question in free agency, I had said, I am on the record for saying this, that I would have given Tremaine Edmonds that Roquan Smith contract. A lot of people said, that's really dumb. What are you talking about? That's not that's too much. Even people who liked Tremaine Edmonds were like, that's a little much. I don't know if I would have given that to him. But I was a big Tremaine Edmonds supporter. I really liked Tremaine Edmonds. And I think I had also just sort of resigned myself to the fact that Ed Oliver was just gonna be a free agent and leave the team at some point. It just sort of felt like that was going to be the thing. Then when Tremaine Edmonds goes to Chicago, it was like, okay, that's tough, but it was expected at that point. If they hadn't re-signed him before free agency started, they weren't going to get him back at that point. And then they bring back Ed Oliver, and then you see the contract that he got from them, and I was like, that's it? I mean, it's a nice contract. Don't get me wrong. It's not like he got underpaid or something like that. We're not talking like a Chris Jones holdout situation where he just like, what was the point of this? But like, you look at it now and you're like, yeah, that was worth it. That was good. That was just a really great signing. Ed Oliver is just a great player. He just fits this whole vibe of the Buffalo Bills really well. He brings all this energy. He's just great. I love Ed Oliver. I'm so glad that we get to watch Ed Oliver for years to come now. Leonard Floyd, another great addition by Brandon Beane in the offseason. Still have no idea how he managed to go until the middle of the summer without being signed. Someone should have taken him before the Bills did. And probably for more money too, if we're being honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he has 9.5 sacks on the season, and I tweeted this out earlier today. This is even surprising to me. Since 2017, the Bills have not had a player with 9 sacks. In 2017, they had a player with 9 sacks. His name was Jordan Phillips. Since then, they have not had a player over that total. So Leonard Floyd, over basically the entirety of Sean McDermott's tenure, now leads the team in sacks in a single season at 9.5, which is wild because he's been here for a hot second, and the season's not even close to over yet. So that total probably gets up maybe close to 15, which would be a huge number for a one-year free agent, and a great season for Leonard Floyd.
Yeah, it's really impressive what he's been able to do. I'm really, really hoping that Ed Oliver gets that Pro Bowl nod this year.
Yeah,
because he has deserved it before, just hasn't had the numbers that people look for in that voting process. But he's been great. The stat sheet shows it. Just a basic look at the stat sheet shows it. The advanced metrics show it. He's the leader in interior pressures, right? This whole season, something like that.
I believe he's up there. Yeah,
stats. Just a great player. Just a great player, and will continue to be a great player. Terrell Bernard. I know you have very strong feelings about Terrell Bernard.
Oh, I do. I mean, coming into the season, so over, I defended the pick last year for different reasons than what we're seeing this season. I did not expect this from Terrell Bernard. I don't think anybody can confidently say they expected what we're seeing from Terrell Bernard, that they believed that was going to happen. But I did see some value in him. I thought he could be a really good special teams player and a good, backup piece if somebody got hurt down the line. But then this offseason progressed, and suddenly it was like, what the hell are we going to do at middle linebacker? Like, we don't have anybody. What the hell are we going to do? And I always went back to Terrell Bernard, and I think a lot of people started doing that, saying there's certain people we can't have playing linebacker. We need Terrell Bernard to get healthy and maybe roll the dice, and hopefully he's good. He hasn't just been good. He's been borderline elite. Like, I say that word very carefully. He's been borderline elite to a point where now I'm starting to wonder, is he going to make an all-pro team this year? I think he gets some votes, but I wonder if he gets all-pro second team. There aren't many linebackers that are having better statistical seasons than Terrell Bernard right now. He has 3.5 sacks, 2 picks, multiple fumble recoveries. He has a ton of tackles. Like, Terrell Bernard's having a legitimately screw it, I'm going to say it. He's having an elite season, which is wild for a first-year starter in this defense. And after Matt Milano went down, it's crazy to think that Terrell Bernard is essentially our savior. Like, if it wasn't for Terrell Bernard, we'd be absolutely screwed as a defense. Not that the defense has been great, but Terrell Bernard has been legitimately great in this defense. And I feel robbed that we don't get to see him and Matt Milano flying around the field all season, and truly hope the Bills can sneak into the playoffs and maybe a miracle happens and somehow Matt Milano comes back, and then all of a sudden this defense has that 1-2 punch of Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano, and that would be phenomenal in the playoffs.
That's a lot.
I know it's a lot.
I don't necessarily feel quite the same way about Terrell Bernard. I love Terrell Bernard. I think he's been very successful, far more than I thought he would be. I think all pros a lot.
I agree. I wouldn't bet on it because last year I thought Matt Milano was having an all-pro season, and I said there's no way he's making that all-pro team because they're just never going to vote for him. And lo and behold, he was a first-team all-pro. So I'll believe anything now. Somebody tells me Terrell Bernard's going to be a second-team, first-team all-pro, I'll buy it.
That's fair enough. I was not sold on Terrell Bernard coming into the season. I just was not sure what he was going to be able to do, and he's been great. And if I'm telling you, even if Matt Milano had gone down this year, which obviously he did, but even if he'd gone down and Daquan Jones didn't, I think you'd still see much more from Terrell Bernard than what we've seen since that injury happened. Daquan Jones has been a big missing piece as well for this defense. And it's another reason why I want the playoffs so bad right now. Obviously, because it's the playoffs and we want a chance, right? But it's also because Daquan Jones has, like, his injury, it's possible he could come back for the playoffs. It's possible. And if he does, that could be like just enough boost for this defense to just like get that extra little bit that they've needed.
Hell yeah.
You know, and I think that would be a really big boon to have it. Of course, you need to make the playoffs to be able to do that, but we'll see what happens there. All right. We're going to move on to our preview of the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going to let you take over for just a quick second here.
Well, David does whatever he's doing. The big game for the Bills here. I think this is one they could, afford to lose, but I think it's one that if the Bills can find a way to win and get to, say, 7-5 before they go into their bye, it'd be a huge boost to their playoff odds, because right now this team has to go 5-2 to have a chance at the playoffs. If they go 4-3, 4-3, probably not making the playoffs. If they go 6-1, though, it's basically a lock that they make the playoffs. It's a rough matchup, though, and we discussed without Teron Johnson, like, this defense is going to look very different against an offense that's pretty dang good. Granted, I don't think they've played great football this year. I think we're going to see a little bit of what the Eagles truly are tonight against the Chiefs. It should be a good game to watch and kind of let us scout what's going on, heading into next weekend's game.
All right, you jabronis. You're going to talk about the Eagles? Grab the hoagie, go down to the Acme, get some water ice, and we're going to be here. We're going to talk about the Eagle. We'll go Birds! Go Birds!
What is that accent?
Don't ask me.
Okay.
So, for those that are unaware, my dad is originally from Lockport, outside of Buffalo. My mom is from right outside Philadelphia. This is the fandoms that I have been born into. So yes, I am also an Eagles fan, and the Cover One Roundup's resident Eagles expert. So we're going to talk about the Eagles right now. So it's funny because the Eagles are like offensively, they're kind of like a Ken Dorsey offense in that it's a very simple offense that just executes at a super high level. And part of the reason they're able to execute at a high level is because they have the best offensive line in football. And that's not like a statement of bragging. That's just facts, right? Like, Jordan Mailata is one of the best left tackles in the NFL. Jason Kelce is a Hall of Fame center. It has been for years. Lane Johnson is a Hall of Fame right tackle and has been for years. Cam Jurgens, when he's healthy, has been good for them. Landon Dickerson's been an all-pro caliber left guard. It's just about one of the most rare concoctions in the NFL to have an offensive line that's this good all the time. Coupled with that is an offensive line coach in Jeff Stoutland, who's also very, very good. You have A.J. Brown, who, just every time he steps on the field, you feel like, how is this man a wide receiver? He looks like he should be at least a tight end, if not like a defensive end. Just bigger and stronger and more muscular than just about every other player that's out there. It's actually ridiculous just how good he is and how athletic he is. It's crazy. And then on the total opposite end of the spectrum is Devontae Smith, who's a skinny little receiver who is just super shifty and like weirdly good at 50-50 balls as well. Just like the perfect wide receiver duo, in my opinion, right? Like you just have a guy that can make every single play that he can in jump ball situations. He can win on slants. He just bullies people at the line. And you have Devontae Smith, who's just so smart and so crafty and so consistent. Like that's the sort of thing that the Bills are going to have to contend with. It's going to be really difficult. Now, I will say this: the Eagles' defense, right? Last year, they had Jonathan Gannon, who has now become the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. Gannon was very sort of laid back. Actually, if we're going to make comparisons to former Bills coaches, sort of like a Leslie Frazier defense, right? Just sort of coverages, laid back, kind of just, let them continue to take long drives because at some point they're going to make a mistake, right? Win with 4 up front, and when you have guys like Hassan Reddick, and last year they had Javon Hargrave, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat, like a lot of these guys are still there except for Javon Hargrave, who got paid by the Niners this offseason. And quick side note, how many guys get a third contract like that? Like, good for Javon Hargrave for being able to get the bag multiple times. I don't know who his agent is, but good for him. But they still have guys like Sweat, like Graham. Cox is still good. And obviously rookie Jalen Carter, who, the big joke and meme among people on NFL Twitter is like, how did the NFL let the Eagles get Jalen Carter? Like, okay, we all know how he fell to the Eagles. We don't want to talk about that because it makes you uncomfortable. Yep. But also, yeah, he's a great player. I'm going to very, very quickly mention this super chat from Zoo L Zoo, Bench Von Failure. Thanks for the $2. That's all I got for that. So yeah, I'm with you. It's the Eagles defense as a whole, though. They played really, really well last year, had a ton of sacks. They had 70 sacks last year. Statistically speaking, there was a point of regression that was going to come for them this year. Whether Jonathan Gannon was going to be their defensive coordinator or whether Sean Desai was going to be their defensive coordinator, who is the defensive coordinator this year. And Sean Desai has done some good stuff with them. Obviously, they played a great game against Miami on Sunday Night Football a couple weeks ago. And then the very next week, they can't get any sort of pressure on Sam Howell and the Commanders. And that was the same case in the first game against the Commanders, where like they just couldn't do anything. They couldn't cover Terry McLaurin. They couldn't cover Jahan Dotson. They just struggled a lot against an offense that's proven to be stoppable. I mean, they've had good moments, obviously, but they've proven to be stoppable. And I think this Eagles defense has a great rotation at defensive line, but their linebackers are very vulnerable. Their safeties, Reed Blankenship is a very smart player, but he's not a great athlete. And you have corners like Darius Slay, who's very opportunistic. James Bradbury is a little long in the tooth, though. Like, there's opportunities to be had against this Eagles defense. And I think the Bills, now starting to feel themselves a little bit more on offense, have a way to take advantage of this Eagles defense. It's all going to come down to, can they win up front? And for as well as Spencer Brown has been playing this year, him versus Hassan Reddick is not a matchup that I like as a Bills fan. As an Eagles fan, I'm kind of interested in watching what happens there. But it's gonna be very, very different to take on this Eagles defense. And I don't think it's quite as formidable as some people might assume it is. The big question is just going to be, how many times can the Bills defense limit the Eagles offense?
Yeah, I that's where I'm at with it, and I have yet to dive fully into this game that starts tomorrow for me, because I got to see what happens in this Chiefs game before I can really get too far into like my personal analysis of the Eagles. But saying that, like, for me, it all comes down to can the Bills defense stop their offense? Like, I think the Bills can put up points. I think. Let's say they put up 28 points. Will that be enough to beat this Eagles team? I don't know, because I just don't know how the Bills can consistently stop the offense that the Eagles have, especially with all the injuries they have, and those 2 wide receivers you mentioned. But it's more the Eagles get to play kind of with house money on every single drive. They get an extra down that not every other team gets. And I just want to say something about that. The concept of banning the tush push is the most ridiculous thing, the most ridiculous storyline that I've seen this season. There's a reason why other teams try it and fail at it, because they're not as good. They don't have the talent that the Eagles have right there in the middle of their offensive. You talked about Jason Kelce being a Hall of Famer. To me, he's a lock. Like, it shouldn't even – he is one of the greatest centers in NFL history. And you talk about that tush push, it starts with Jason Kelce. He is so freaking good at it. If it wasn't for Jason Kelce, they would not have the success rate they do. And that tush push is a massive part of this offense because it continues drives. If they get to the 1 yard line, it's a touchdown. Like, they're scoring a touchdown. You might as well just let them walk in. Don't get your players hurt. They're going to score anyway. That's what I'm wondering. Can the Bills keep them from getting 9 yards? They literally play 1st and 8 every single drive. If you can limit them to 8 yards when it gets to 4th down, you have a chance. If they get 9 yards and it's 4th and 1, you've already lost. They're going to get that 1st down.
Yeah. And really the only time the tush push has not been successful has been when they just fumble the ball, like they did against the Commanders a couple weeks ago, where it's just like that. The only way they get beat on that is if they beat themselves, right? Like this is what you said is essentially what Nick Sirianni said a couple weeks ago, which is like he looked straight at the camera. He's like, "Where's the camera? Hey, if everyone could do it, everybody would do it, but they can't."
100% right.
And it's actually going to be very interesting to see Bills fans react to Nick Sirianni, because I don't think, because of how infrequently the Bills play teams in the NFC, I don't think most Bills fans even know like who Nick Sirianni is, like what he's really about. He's a very unique personality. And I say that in the sense that if you're not an Eagles fan, you probably hate Nick Sirianni. He's just a very obnoxious, very loud mouth type of coach. And he does a lot of, weird antic type of things on the sideline, and he gets in refs' faces, and he's basically like admitted to paying fines so that he doesn't do halftime interviews, which like honestly I respect him so much for that because I hate those stupid halftime interviews. But I really Nick Sirianni is a very, very good coach. It's not just a bunch of BS with him. Like he's a genuine guy. The players really love playing for him. He's a smart guy. He knows how to put together good offenses. He puts together great staffs. He's a tough coach to go against, and he's pretty much the most aggressive 4th down coach, I think. Obviously in large part because of the tush push, where he's just like, yeah, I don't care if I'm on my own 33. It's 4th and 1. We can get it. Yeah. And he's right. So I think that watching Bills fans react to Nick Sirianni throughout this game is going to be entertaining to me. But yeah, it's going to be a lot for some Bills fans to watch. It's going to be a really interesting game. It's going to be a very tough game for the Bills overall. It's a winnable game though. It really is.
Yeah. I mean, I question for you, because you obviously follow the Eagles more than I do. So they're 8-1 right now. They're going to play the Chiefs tonight. Who knows? Maybe they get to 9-1. Maybe they fall to 8-2. So the handful of games that I've actually watched them play, I find myself saying like, it's not the team I saw last year. They're still good. They're still really good. But I'm like, there's something like off. Something seems a little bit not clicking. Almost like it wasn't clicking for the Bills for 6 weeks, but not to the same extremes. And they're finding ways to win those games, right? They're having the same thing. You talk about the Commanders game. they shouldn't have won that game, but they did win that game. And there's been a couple games this year that were one-score games where it's like the Eagles found a way to win the game in games that the Bills didn't find a way. So from your perspective, where do you see this Eagles team? Like, are they not regressing, but is there like an issue that you could point to where you're like, yeah, there's something wrong here that they're still trying to figure out right now?
So losing both of your coordinators is tough, right? Like, some Eagles fans were very happy to see Jonathan Gannon go. I thought he was overhated as the Eagles defensive coordinator. I thought he was much smarter in terms of developing coverages than he was given credit for. And people talk about, oh, well, he had a 2-score lead against the Chiefs and they collapsed in the Super Bowl. It's the freaking Chiefs. It's Andy Reid with his 3 decades of play calling and offensive experience versus Jonathan Gannon's 10. Relax. It's Patrick Mahomes. Relax. I'm not going to hold that against Jonathan Gannon. Some things are just impossible to stop. But the big loss was really Shane Steichen, right? Yeah. Where Shane Steichen was a great offensive mind and is continuing to prove that he's a great offensive mind with the Colts. Where Anthony Richardson played really, really well before he had to have his shoulder surgery. He had, at certain points, Gardner Minshew handing off to Zach Moss, and they would score 22 points in a game. They really shouldn't have been able to do that, but he's been making it work, and he's a smart coordinator. He's aggressive. And Bobby Johnson was the quarterback's coach who got promoted to the offensive coordinator after Shane Steichen left. And part of that was because of Bobby Johnson's relationship to Jalen Hurts. They've known each other for a very long time. And I think you're just seeing those growing pains for a first-year play caller. And I don't know if there's necessarily a ton of differences between the Shane Steichen offense and the Bobby Johnson offense. I think in general, a lot of the staples are still there. But you're just seeing somebody who is struggling to figure out exactly how to sequence plays consistently. You're seeing somebody who took time to really figure out how to make sure the different parts and pieces always work together consistently.
This sounds overall sounds familiar to me.
It does sound
familiar to me.
Now I will say I think that overall the Bills with Ken Dorsey and their issues with that are not exactly the same as they are with the Eagles and Bobby Johnson. And it is what it is. But I think overall, like you said, the Eagles are finding ways to win games. They're coming up big at the end of games, whether it was the Rams game earlier in the season, the Cowboys game a couple weeks ago. Obviously, the Cowboys got all the way down to the 5, ended up getting pushed back from a penalty and then a couple of sacks. They find a way to win games, and they're a tough team to go all 60 minutes against. But they're beatable. And if Josh Allen feels like he's back, then you kind of feel like you can beat anyone.
Yeah, I'm going to throw out one name of a dark horse, and this is essentially the last thing I have to say about this Eagles game until I dive more into it. One dark horse for me this game, Linval Joseph. If there's one human on earth that could in a way compete with said tush push, it's an immovable object named Linval Joseph, who you can just sit there and be like, all right, try to push me backwards. It ain't going to work for you. I mean, I still think we see the tush push dominate, but if Linval Joseph can't stop it, then literally nobody on earth can except prime Troy Polamalu, who would jump over the line and time it perfectly.
Exactly. It's going to be a very tough game for both of these teams, I think. It's going to be a very entertaining game, I imagine. It's a 4:25 game, if I'm remembering correctly, in Philadelphia. It's going to be a tough matchup for the Bills, but they need as many wins as they can get at this point. Just find a way to win and keep your playoff hopes alive. Folks, that is going to be it for us here on the Cover One Roundup. Thank you all for joining us. We are glad to be able to do this again after being off last week with Monday Night Football. and our other engagements. If you haven't already, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share this with your friends, lovers, enemies, and neighbors. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, derogatory remarks, now's your chance to hit the comment button below and leave us a comment as well. All those sorts of things help us with engagement and help with the algorithm, which spreads this beyond just our own little wonderful Cover One community. And we're always looking for growth and for bringing new people into our realm of football and smart football talk. Thank you all for joining us again. If you're already a One Pass subscriber, thank you so much. If you're not, consider joining One Pass. It is not $57 a year. It's actually $60 a year. I will figure out a way to change that at some point, I'm sure. But for $60 a year, you're getting the best analysis on Bills football that you can possibly get. You're getting great content, members only content. You're getting scouting reports. You're getting analytics. You're getting in-depth analysis, maybe even some breaking news here and there before anyone else gets it. Who's to say? Not me. You get access to the Cover One Slack channel where you get to talk with a whole bunch of like-minded and really great Bills fans, and it's a really great community. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing that we've created here at Cover One. You also get a nice t-shirt and decal, and who doesn't want free swag? So if you're not a One Pass subscriber, consider it. It's a really great way to support us directly, and we always really appreciate our One Pass subscribers. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Glad to be back. We'll be back next week after that Bills-Eagles game. Uber, where can the people find you?
At UberHansen on the Twitters. It's still Twitter for me, just like it is for you, David. But on Wednesday, I'll drop my rooting interest post, which will tell you who you should root for in every single week. And it kind of rates the games between 1 and 5 and how important they are to the Bills. And that's, for some reasons, is important in 2023, even though I wish it wasn't. And then on Friday this week, Black Friday, when we apparently have a football game between the Jets and the Dolphins, I'll also be dropping my matchup preview of the Bills-Eagles game, and as I dive into that game. And also real quick, because I see a bunch of comments and that are pissed off at you in particular for this, quick true or rubbish. You just have to say one word, true or rubbish. The Bills make the playoffs.
Hold on. We gotta do the thing. We gotta do it. Since people are demanding it.
True or rubbish. Let's go.
So true or rubbish, the Bills make the playoffs.
This was true all after all. Can't believe it. It was true.
It was true. The Bills are making the playoffs. Folks, you can find me at DFoxy. Please send any and all aggressive comments that way. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.